Hey guys, welcome to the show. This is the Gingersnap podcast. Now, this episode that you're about to listen to comes from me. It is still from me. I am the host, as always, Patrick Michael. But this podcast episode was actually created for a whole different show. It was not meant for the Gingersnap podcast. It was meant for a music review podcast that I was going to create. And as it seems, it's pretty difficult to make a podcast dedicated to music review. And for some reason, I guess maybe the title of my podcast or the way that I did this episode, I don't know. Either way, it was not pushing me out to other platforms where I could get heard more often. So I figure let's do some editing, let's chop it down, change some things, and I'll just deliver it to you guys right here on the Gingersnap podcast as sort of a secondary episode. Before we get started and you actually listen to this episode, I want to tell you guys that I do live podcasting where you can get involved through the app Castbox. That's Castbox. Come over there. I usually post on social media at Patrick Michael Comedy or Seamus the Host on Instagram, as well as Twitter at Chewed Gum or Real Chewed or Original Shame. I'll post about going live. Now, when I go live, you guys can easily just send a message or whatever, and I can talk about it right in the show, right while I'm recording. Now, unfortunately, I did not get to upload the first episode I did. It was about 42 minutes, give or take, and I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of great people that I chatted with, and this podcast is still very much in its infancy. So seeing all the people who had involved themselves this early was amazing. So I'll be doing it live again on Castbox very soon. So if you want to join in on the conversation, man, please do. I might start a show tomorrow during the UFC fights. We will see. It'll be 4:20. So if you guys want to come hang out and listen to this show and listen to me talk live, please do. On Castbox. You can download the app, Castbox FM, whatever you want to call it, what have you. It's an amazing app. It's the one app that I use to listen to all my podcasts and continue to do so. But as I said, this episode is strictly about a music review. I discussed two different albums, two amazing artists, and hopefully you enjoy.
And what's going to be happening in this show is I have been a long-time musician. I've been a musician for 16 years. I still currently dabble in music, especially when it comes to creating music for my podcast. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at two specific albums each episode. So every episode is going to be devoted to two different albums, and it's different genres too. It doesn't have to be even in the same genre, the same field. It's not a comparison between the two albums. It is merely a comparison to me and how I feel about each album specifically. Really, the concept is just trying to get into something new. Maybe one of these, albums that I happen to listen to, I might enjoy thoroughly, overwhelmingly, and become a huge fan, a huge new fan to, become a new fan of something I've never listened to before, right? I mean, that's really what I'm looking forward to the most, is finding an album, listening to it, and becoming a fan of something I've never ever heard of, or I've heard of, but I didn't know that I would enjoy. Now, one of the first things I'm actually going to do here on this show, specifically this episode, is I'm going to tell you guys a bit about my musical career and what has been my music career over the last 16 years and how it's developed and where I've came from, where I've been, all those different things that, has made me, I guess, who I am today, right? and in more ways than one. But yeah, we're going to do that, and we're going to be looking at a lot more things today. We're going to look at two amazing albums, two albums that I fully enjoy. So if you tuned into this show expecting me to maybe rag on one of these artists, you're in the wrong place, man. You're in the wrong place because both of these guys, fantastic. Literally fantastic. So let's do that, man. Let's get into this right now. All right, guys. So music for me has always been a huge, huge part of my life. You know, I grew up falling asleep in the back seat of the car as my mom listened to, had it blaring, Def Leppard, Cheap Trick, Kiss, all of those things. So, honestly, not just music has been a part of my life, but rock music, the concept of a band has been a huge part of my life. More often than not, it's a band that is more enticing to me than just a single singer. Like, oh, that man or woman has, a great voice. Sure, that's all well and good, but what about the music? Is the music there? Is the musicianship there? If it's not, then it just takes away from the artist and their ability to create good vocals, that matches the music. That's the whole idea. But I already have this weird feeling doing this podcast that I'm heading towards great success. And I don't want to be too, jump to the gun too quickly, just for the simple fact that I can't guarantee anything. But I will say I do have a plethora of experience in music, as well as bands and all of these things and production and shit like that. So it makes me have a very interesting take on a lot of music. And I'm very favorable towards most music. There's not really any one specific genre that I haven't listened to or dabbled in. And, can't see the favoritism, I guess, why people like that genre. I can fully understand it, and I get it, and I understand why certain music exists, while other music can come and go so quickly. But my beginnings in music honestly starts with my career as a screamer, if that makes sense. Not a sexual thing, but a screamer is also known these days as an unclean vocalist, which is virtually just somebody who does metal music. I have done metal. That's my favorite genre. That's my favorite genre of music to do pretty much always. There's an aggression about it, but I'll be honest, when I first started really enjoying music and it became a huge part of my life, it was hip hop. It was Nelly, Hot in Here, stuff like that. Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP. It was the first album I actually ever purchased. And I remember it distinctly because it was the most expensive fucking CD I have ever bought. I can't say that it's because, timing, like I got the CD right when it came out. I'm pretty sure that's not the case. I believe it just happened to be the music store. I can't remember what it's called, but I know it was a huge place. A lot of people went there. You could get all of the CDs, any CD you wanted, from this one location. So I went there and spent the $25 and bought the Marshall Mathers LP, specifically because a friend of mine was playing it, and I loved it. There was just something so comical about the music as well as the lyrics. There was something really fun that kind of made it enticing for younger kids, which is really weird. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Right now I'm just introducing you guys to me and my history as a musician. Just that kind of gives me, it'll kind of give you guys an idea as to why this podcast is so special for me, because I love music. I seriously do, and you guys are going to learn about this over time. The more often that you listen to the show, you're going to see my diversity as a music fan. There's not really much that I dislike. Everything has a specific spot and meaning for me, and we're going to continue to do that. But I started playing music in like 7th grade, started doing vocals and all of those things. I was like 13 years old. Production was shit. I don't really have any evidence of these things. This is before Facebook. MySpace was really the only thing. And even back then, if you didn't know how to upload music to online and shit like that, it wasn't going to benefit you anyways. But I started out in 7th grade, started doing unclean vocals. I really loved it. I always was a leader out of all my friends. So when it came to making music, I just felt it was only right that I tried to sing. I became the singer guy, the man behind the microphone, just like now. But in my head, I feel like I was better. I'm better at the music thing rather than the podcasting. No, I'm just kidding. I love podcasting. It really encompasses everything that I've enjoyed in my life. Talking a lot, trying to be funny a lot, and obviously the amazing subject matter that I love to talk about. But either way, man, I started out in 7th grade singing, and over time, MySpace was the big deal, and to get into a band back then, a lot of them would put, next to their name, in parentheses, they would say, we need a vocalist, or a drummer needed, or bass player needed. And I had a real issue with this because during my time trying to become a vocalist in a band, everybody needed something else. They needed a drummer. They needed a guitar player, a bassist, anything other than vocals. So in my mind, I'm like, well, if this is what they need, then that's what I will become so I can give it to them. If they need a drummer, I'm going to learn how to play drums. They need a guitar player, I'm going to learn how to play guitar. You want a vocalist that can also play keyboards? I'm going to do that. So I went out of my way when I was 18 years old and decided to get my first drum set. It was a $250 Target drum set. That's right. I know you guys have heard of Target, but were you aware that you could buy musical equipment back then? Huh? Did you know? I kind of ran into it myself. I had no idea. But in the long run, I learned it doesn't matter. It's better to be versatile anyways. So you were either going to be a good vocalist and get a job in a band, or you were going to be a good drummer and get the job in a band. So it was really just about practice makes perfect, man, and nobody's perfect. And when it comes to music, there is no end game. You never become the perfect guitar player, the best guitar player, the best drummer, the best singer. None of these things exist because there's always room to grow. Always room to grow, especially in music. Music is one of the few genres of entertainment that is always improving and getting better. In a lot of ways, they're taking things away from music these days, but, nonetheless, it is still very entertaining. The characters that are created through music are some of the most influential characters in our world. In the long run, when you think about it as a whole, 50 Cent's a pretty big deal now, and he was just a simple rapper from New York, and he's a mogul now. He got a lot of money, even though people were talking about him being bankrupt. And then it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear to me, at least. Pretty clear to me that, it's most definitely, he's got a lot of money, put it that way. He has not failed yet. I mean, with as many songs as he put out that people of all different kinds can reference the hook, the lyrics, whatever, it just shows you how good he really was. But either way, this brings me to my whole point as a musician. I've spent 16 years, and I only stopped at 16 years because, we just fell into a slump, and I fell into a slump and just wanted to start creating other things. And where I'm currently located, it seems as if there's not a very high demand for musicians or people that are musicians looking to create a band, right? So you get put in an awkward situation where you're like, well, I still want to create, but I don't have the means to an end. And I found myself long ago, after learning how to play all of these instruments, I figure I'll just create by myself. Why go out of my way and try to involve other people that are just going to take away from my ideas? It's ultimately not going to be my idea in the end. It's going to be everyone's idea when I can go and work with myself and create exactly what I want, how I want it, every time. It's so much better. Speaking of which, you guys have probably heard the intro music for this podcast because it's going to be at the very beginning of every show. And I created that music. I also created I added 2 different quotes and interview portions of John Lennon and Jim Morrison, very influential musicians to me. And they will always be a part of the beginning and the end of the show. So you'll get to deal with that if it's an issue, I guess. Otherwise, you're going to love it.